Hey everyone, welcome back to the deep dive. We've got some really great listener-submitted stuff for this deep dive, focusing on, well, a pretty universal challenge for English learners.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of you are hitting this point, the sort of mental wall where you're constantly translating from your native language into English in your head.
Exactly. It's like having this little translator constantly running in the background. And as we'll explore, it can really be a big roadblock to fluency.
For sure. And thankfully, the material you all sent in gives us a super concrete example of this. It's this conversation between Arjun, an English learner who's really struggling with this translation habit, and Mira, who's a fluent English speaker and offers some really practical advice on how to break free from that.
Yeah, what I love about this is that it's not just theoretical. It's a very real scenario with real-world solutions. So in this deep dive, we're going to really unpack those aha moments, the key techniques.
Yeah, and ultimately give you a kind of shortcut to moving beyond that stage of translating into English and actually starting to think in English.
Because that's where the real magic happens, right? When you can just think and express yourself naturally without that extra step of translation. And we want to make sure this is super clear and digestible so you don't feel overwhelmed, but actually walk away with some actionable insights.
Right on. So jumping right in, the conversation starts with Arjun describing this experience that I think a lot of people can relate to. He's trying to say, I'm hungry, but what comes out is, I have hunger.
Which, as he points out, is a direct word-for-word translation of the Hindi phrase, Mujhe bhook lagi hai.
Yeah, and this instantly highlights that core issue, the way mental translation can become this deeply ingrained habit.
Absolutely. And Mira right away addresses why this is such a problem for fluency.
She makes this brilliant analogy to driving. Think about when you first learned to drive, all that conscious effort.
Oh, totally. Like checking your mirrors, remembering to signal. It's so much to think about.
Exactly. And then compare that to how automatic it becomes later on. You don't even think about those individual actions, you just drive. And she's saying that's what you need to aim for with English.
For it to become that default mode of thinking.
Precisely. And it's not just about the extra time it takes to translate in your head, it's about the cognitive energy involved. It's like your brain's working overtime.
It's doing double duty processing the meaning in one language and then trying to reassemble it in another. And that takes up valuable mental bandwidth that could be used for, well, actually speaking and expressing yourself more naturally.
100%. And what's so interesting is that Mira then gives these super clear examples of why this kind of literal translation often leads to awkward or just plain wrong English.
Right. And she starts with main school jarahan becoming I school going am.
It's almost like something Yoda would say.
It's hilarious, but it perfectly illustrates how the structure of languages can be so fundamentally different. You can't just swap words in and expect it to work.
And it's not just word order, it's the whole grammatical logic. And her second example, Mujhe neend aa raha hai, translating to sleep is coming to me, instead of I'm feeling sleepy, further proves that point.
Even if the literal translation kind of gets the meaning across, it just sounds off, right? It doesn't capture the natural, idiomatic way English speakers express things.
Yeah.
Do you think there are certain types of grammatical structures that are more susceptible to this kind of translation fail than others based on your expertise?
Well, the material doesn't dive into specific grammatical categories, but it really highlights how each language has this internal system, this unique set of rules.
It's like its own DNA, right?
Yeah, and trying to force one language's grammar onto another just doesn't work. You end up with these clunky sentences that just don't sound right to a native speaker's ear.
So having seen these pitfalls of translation, let's shift gears and look at Mira's more practical advice for actually cultivating this habit of English thinking.
And she proposes a really nice gradual approach, starting with the most basic level, thinking in single words. It's about building those direct associations.
So instead of seeing a chair and thinking kursi, then chair, it's about going straight from chair to the image.
Exactly. You're essentially cutting out that middleman, that translation step, and forging a direct connection between the concept and the English word.
It's like building a new, faster neural pathway in your brain.
That's a great way to put it. And once you've laid that foundation with individual words, she suggests moving on to short, everyday phrases. Think, what time is it? or let's go.
The bread and butter of daily conversation, really.
Right. And the idea here is to internalize these whole phrases as single units of meaning without breaking them down into their individual components in your native language.
It's like memorizing chunks of language as if they were single words themselves.
Exactly. And that brings us to her third step, which is actually using English for your internal dialogue, all those thoughts that are constantly running through your head.
That's a really interesting one. Did she give any specific examples of what that looks like in practice?
Yeah, she uses Arjun's example of glancing at the clock and thinking, it's 9 o'clock instead of 9 baje hain in Hindi.
It's about making that conscious choice to think in English, even for the most mundane things.
Exactly. Your inner monologue becomes this English practice zone. And she suggests starting with simple topics, things like the weather, how you're feeling, your daily routine.
It's about creating this immersive English environment inside your own mind.
Precisely. And while it might feel a bit awkward or forced at first, the key is to start small and be consistent. As you get more comfortable, it'll become more natural and automatic. And to make this even more tangible, Mira lays out some really fun and easy mental exercises.
Oh, I love this part. Give us the goods.
Okay, so the first one is simply describing what you see around you out loud in English, like the fan is spinning, the dog is barking, the sky is blue.
Super simple sentences, but it's all about building that habit of observing and verbalizing directly in English. And the beauty is you can do this anywhere, anytime.
Exactly. Then she suggests talking to yourself in the mirror. Now, I know this might sound a little strange, but it's a really low-pressure way to practice forming sentences and even pay attention to your pronunciation.
That's like having a conversation with the most non-judgmental listener in the world.
Exactly. And it helps you get more comfortable with the sound of your own voice speaking English. The third exercise she recommends is narrating your day as you go about it.
So if you're cooking, you might be thinking, I'm chopping onions, I'm boiling water.
Exactly. Again, it's about linking your actions and environment directly to English, reinforcing that idea that English is the language of your thoughts, not just something you speak externally.
Now, one thing that Arjun brings up is how to handle more complex thoughts, like expressing opinions or abstract ideas. That's often where that urge to translate really kicks in, right?
Absolutely, and this is where Mira gives some more advanced examples that show how direct translation can sometimes miss the nuances of English.
I'm curious to hear these.
So she takes the thought, Zindagi ek safar hai, jize humain kushi se jina chahiye. Now, the literal translation is, life is a journey, which we should live happily, which is grammatically correct, but it sounds a bit stiff.
It's not quite how a native speaker would phrase it.
Right, and Mira suggests life is a journey and we should enjoy every moment of it.
That sounds so much more natural and fluent. It captures the essence of the meaning while sounding completely natural in English.
Exactly. And it highlights that moving beyond translation is not just about vocabulary, it's about developing a sensitivity to English phrasing and idiom.
It's like cultivating an ear for what sounds right.
Precisely. And her second example is, Mujhe lagta hai ki samay ke saath sab theek ho jayega, which translates literally to, I feel that with time, everything will be okay. Again, grammatically fine, but it feels a bit formal and indirect.
So how would you phrase that more naturally?
Mira suggests, I believe things will get better with time. It's shorter, more direct, and more expressive.
It feels more confident too.
Yes, and those subtle shifts in wording really make a huge difference in how fluent you sound.
This is so helpful. I can see how these examples could really help learners make that jump from translating to thinking directly in English.
And building on that, Mira then dives into what she calls mind traps, those psychological barriers that keep people stuck in the cycle of translation.
Oh, this is interesting. I'm all ears.
So the first one she identifies is the fear of making mistakes.
I think everyone can relate to this, that anxiety about getting it wrong, which can be really paralyzing, especially in the beginning.
And Mira wisely points out that this overthinking, driven by the fear of errors, actually strengthens your reliance on your native language.
Because you're so focused on getting it perfect that you end up retreating to the comfort zone of what you know.
Exactly. And she stresses that mistakes are not something to be avoided, but actually a crucial part of the learning process.
They're like stepping stones, right? You learn from them and you move forward.
That's a great way to think about it. The second mind trap she mentions is lack of vocabulary.
This one seems pretty self-explanatory. If you don't know the English word for something, you're naturally going to fall back on your native language.
It's unavoidable, right? And it underscores the importance of continually expanding your English vocabulary. The more words you have at your disposal, the less you'll need to rely on translation.
It's like building up your arsenal of English words.
Exactly. And the third trap she identifies is perfectionism, that desire to speak flawless English from the get-go.
This is something I struggle with even in my own language, that pressure to always get it right.
And as Mira points out, that can be a real hindrance to fluency. It makes you hesitant to speak, and it keeps you locked in that internal translation mode.
It's like you're constantly editing yourself before you even open your mouth.
And that stifles the natural flow of language. Her point is that fluency comes from using the language actively, not perfectly crafting it in your head.
It's about embracing those imperfections, especially early on.
Absolutely. It's more important to communicate effectively than to be grammatically perfect. And having identified these roadblocks, she then offers some really practical tools and habits that can help facilitate this shift to English thinking.
I'm excited to hear these. Lay them on us.
All right, so the first one is surprisingly simple. Change the language setting on your phone to English.
It's such a small tweak, but I can see how it could make a big difference. You're constantly exposed to English in a familiar context.
Exactly. It's like this subtle immersion throughout your day.
I love it. What else?
Another great tip is to actively engage with English content. She suggests starting with movies or shows with English subtitles and gradually transitioning to watching without them.
That's a great way to train your ear to comprehend English directly.
Precisely. You start by making those connections between the spoken and written word, and then you challenge yourself to understand by ear alone.
It's like taking off the training wheels.
Right. Exactly. She also recommends keeping a daily diary in English, even if it's just a few sentences about your day.
This is a great way to practice formulating your thoughts directly in English without the pressure of speaking.
And in today's digital world, she suggests utilizing tools like ChatGPT for English conversation practice.
It's like having a readily available conversation partner without the fear of judgment.
And it gives you that immediate feedback, which is invaluable for learning.
This is so great. I'm already taking notes. Any other golden nuggets of wisdom?
The last one is super tangible. Label everyday objects in your house with their English names.
Chair, table, door, window. It's like creating an English-speaking environment in your own home.
And it reinforces that direct association between the object and the word, which is key for internalizing vocabulary.
So essentially, Mira's message is that thinking in English is not some magical ability. It's a learned skill, a habit that you can cultivate.
And that's incredibly empowering because it means it's accessible to anyone, regardless of their background or native language.
And Arjun's realization that mental translation was his biggest obstacle is a huge takeaway for all of us.
Once you identify the root of the problem, you can start to address it directly.
And Mira's emphasis on aiming for fluent and flowing English rather than striving for perfection is so freeing.
It takes the pressure off and allows you to focus on communicating effectively.
It's about enjoying the process of learning and expressing yourself rather than getting bogged down in grammar rules.
And she ends with this really powerful statement. English is not a subject, it's a way of life. Think it, live it, speak it.
I love that. It's about integrating English into your daily life, making it an integral part of who you are.
It's about seeing English not just as a tool, but as a way of experiencing and interacting with the world.
So, dear listeners, take that message to heart. Start small, Hyanmet. Think in English words. Use those common phrases. Maybe even try narrating a bit of your morning routine in English.
It's about building that muscle, breaking free from the translation trap, and making English a more natural and effortless part of your life.
And remember, the journey to fluency is not about perfection. It's about progress, persistence, and embracing the joy of learning.
And one final thought for you to ponder. Think about how making this shift from translating to thinking in English might not only boost your fluency, but also open up new ways of seeing the world, of connecting with English speakers and understanding their cultures on a deeper level.
It's like gaining a new perspective, a new lens through which to experience the world. So keep practicing, keep exploring, and keep diving deep into the wonderful world of English. We'll be back with another fascinating deep dive soon. Until then, happy learning.
See you next time.